Blizzard released a patch yesterday for Warcraft 3, fixing something that has long been broken. But sometimes broken things can be really interesting for gameplay, whereas other times they're not good gameplay. You know, for games that are older, bugs can eventually become features, and those features can become appreciated by the community of people that play that game. But other times it might just be an oversight, something that has slipped past the cracks during active development of a game, and eventually you may end up fixing it in order to make the game better. I'm going to be discussing the change that Blizzard made yesterday for Warcraft 3, and it is not conclusive whether they made a mistake or not, or whether it should be reverted or not. I've got some opinions on it, I've done some experimenting and testing, and I want to explain how a seemingly niche bug fix for Warcraft 3 that was released yesterday could have potentially negative consequences for the game's logic and consistency. So if you're ready to jump into a little bit of nerding out about Warcraft 3, then you've made it to the right video. So yesterday Blizzard released a fix for items. Hotfix for charged item cooldowns. The hotfix stipulates that items will no longer reset in their cooldown when they're passed over to another hero. And in order to understand that correctly for everyone, I will need to help explain to you the different types of cooldowns that there are in Warcraft 3, but more on that later. Let's put it like this. Take for instance the Rod of Necromancy. The Rod of Necromancy is an undead item that has a 24-second internal cooldown. The intended purpose for Rod of Necromancy is that a player can use it at most once every 24 seconds. It has 4 charges on it, so you can use it 4 times, 20 seconds apart. So if I have a Rod of Necromancy with the starting amount of charges of 4 charges, and then I use one of those, then the next charge can be used, I have 3 left, the next charge can be used after 24 seconds. However, up until yesterday's fix, you would be able to bypass the cooldown by passing the Rod of Necromancy to another hero, say from your Death Knight to your Lich. The Lich has its own personal internal cooldown meter, which corresponds to the Rod of Necromancy item, and the Lich could then use that same Rod of Necromancy's second charge as soon as he receives the Rod, even if that was still within the 24-second period where the item should be unusable. It would then leave the Rod with 2 out of 4 charges remaining. You could then give it to a third hero and also use skeletons there. And if you have an ally, all 4 charges could be used in the space of 2 seconds, when of course originally this should be taking 72 seconds as intended. So it is clear that players have managed to bypass the original intended use for the item. And the question is, since it has been so long that this is possible, 20 years or so, should it now be addressed? Well, Blizzard said yes, they've addressed it. This is no longer possible in the new patch. But there are some unintended quirks and side effects that need to be discussed to fully understand what happened in yesterday's hotfix. And also, old enough games can have bugs that eventually become features, because the players learn to live with the jank of a game along with all of its intended and unintended outcomes and side effects. And then we need to ask ourselves, do we want this bug to be fixed? In StarCraft 1's Brood War, you can couple your Mutalisk group together with a larvae. A larvae is hard locked to stay at the hatchery, and the larvae is the primary unit production facilitation for Zerg. The larvae will remain at the hatchery and you can turn them into a unit. So they're not a fighting unit. They have a lot of armor, but they have very little health and they have no attack. They can turn into something, but they cannot fight. Yet, you can have a larvae on the map here and you can have all your Mutalisks on the map here. They can be in a control group together, and doing that changes the behavior of the Mutalisks, making them far more agile and more controllable and more lethal. When pros found this out, bundling your 11 Mutalisks, maximum group size if you want to leave space for a larva, and the larva together to do long-term harassment against enemy worker lines and marines, and they become far more microable and maneuverable than they would be without the larvae. What is happening is that the Mutalisks do far less splitting and spreading when the larva is in the group, allowing them to do better concentrated focus fire while having fewer stragglers outside the group. This is essentially a strange mechanic that, one, you need to know about it. If you don't know about it, you're massively behind. 2, you then need to do it, which could be tedious or it could be interesting depending on your version of enjoying the game. And then the third one is it was unintended, and so it is essentially maybe a bug or an exploit abuse, an AI abuse, or a quirk of the game. And then the question is this leading to better gameplay or not? And that is a very personal question that should be answered for everyone themselves. But by now, StarCraft players don't want this changed anymore. Blizzard could fix it, but the StarCraft community by and large said don't fix it. And so is this, the same is true for many other Brood War jank, in that they don't want this to be fixed, because this is how it has always been, and so it shall be this way, because it's actually kind of fun to use Mutalisks this way. And in fact, it is also a balancing power for the Mutalisks to be able to use it in this way, which makes them much more useful than they otherwise would be. So there's always the strength component. How strong are they with the jank and the exploit, and how strong are they without the jank and the exploit? And then there is is this generally interesting gameplay and skill expression? As a professional gamer or an ex-professional competitive player, I often feel like that skill expression, even at the cost of tedium, having to tediously do a mechanical task, is part and parcel of RTS and is interesting. I think it's interesting to watch, and it's interesting to play with and against. So I'm never against this kind of jank and exploitation, except when it is so game-breakingly powerful or so counter-logic and counter-intended that it is too far into the extreme. For example, 20 years ago, you could use a single Staff of Preservation on Night Elf. You would use it on your Demon Hunter and you would staff a bear. The Staff of Preservation has a 30-second cooldown, but you could bypass that by passing the staff over to a second hero, who would then also staff a bear. And then immediately you pass it to your third hero, the Priestess of the Moon, and she would also staff a bear. And that is probably very, very probably too powerful. And so Blizzard fixed that a long time ago. I don't know if it's 19 years ago or if it's 21 years ago, but it got fixed a long time ago. And that is going to be a very important historical fact for understanding cooldown management on items and heroes in Warcraft 3 today. More on that later. So there are two different types of cooldowns in Warcraft 3. There is what I call a global cooldown. The global cooldown of an item. This is always true. So nowadays, Staff of Preservation, I should say in yesterday's version of the game, today it's there might be some differences. So up until now, Staffs of Sanctuary now have a global cooldown after Blizzard fixed it 20 years ago. And what that means is if Archmage uses Staff of Sanctuary, the item goes on a 45-second cooldown. And if he then passes over the item to his Mountain King, the item remembers that it's on a 45 or by now 44-second cooldown, and then Mountain King can't use it. However, if Archmage has his own staff and Mountain King has his own staff, they can both use the cooldown independently. Obviously, two heroes, two staffs, but there are a couple of weird quirks with it that we'll get into a little bit more later, and I'm going to do some in-game testing to show it to you as well. It's not the same with healing potions. Up until the version of the game yesterday, healing potions operate under different rules. And I call healing potions hero-based cooldowns. So we've got the global item cooldown and we've got the hero item cooldown. So hero cooldowns are different. If you will, there's both the UI, UX aspect of item cooldown display, and there's also the programming aspect of item cooldowns. So when I'm speaking about the programming rules for this, understand that it works like this. A healing potion and a Rod of Necromancy, essentially under the hood of things in the programming side of things, even though I'm not a programmer, but on the programming side of things, the Rod of Necromancy and the healing potion apply a debuff to the hero that used it that says, this hero cannot use heal pots again for 20 seconds. And that is the hero cooldown of healing potions. If he has 2 heal potions, he uses heal pot 1, he gets healing, then he gets a debuff that's hidden. There is no buff icon visible like in Dota 2, and it says this hero cannot use heal pot again for 20 seconds. The heal pot that he has in his inventory starts to tick with a 20-second cooldown. because that is the way of displaying item cooldowns. Whether it's a global item cooldown or whether it's a hero-based debuff cooldown, it is displayed only in a single way, which is a clock on the item that says this many seconds you cannot use heal pot. If the Death Knight uses a heal potion and he has a second pot, the second pot looks to be on cooldown, but the second pot isn't really on cooldown. He can give that second healing potion to the Lich, who then uses it, who does not have any visible cooldown, because the Lich is not affected, to be clear, with a healing potion debuff icon, which is to say Lich cannot use heal pot right now, because he hasn't used one yet. Right? And that is different with Staff of Sanctuary, where if I have Staff of Sanctuary, I use it, and then I give it to the Lich, then he cannot use it because it is tied to the item. And Rod of Necromancy, up until now, has worked just like Healing Potion, in that it can be passed over, and then another hero can use it, because Rod of Necromancy essentially is hero cooldown based. It applies a debuff on the hero. This hero cannot use any Rod of Necromancy. It doesn't matter if it's this Rod of Necromancy or another Rod of Necromancy, no matter what. This hero cannot use Rod of Necromancy for the next 24 seconds. Blizzard made a change yesterday that now every single item, Heal Pot, Rod of Necromancy and Staff of Sanctuary all follow the previous Staff of Sanctuary rule set under the hood on the programming level. And that means that if I have 2 healing potions and I use one in the current live version post hotfix, the second heal pot doesn't just visually go on cooldown in the inventory of my Death Knight, but now when I give the healing potion to my Lich, the Lich cannot use that healing potion, even though he has not been using any potions recently. So essentially, the way I understand it, what is happening when we use the global item cooldown, essentially, as my Death Knight in the current live version of the game, post hotfix, as I use a healing potion or a Staff of Sanctuary or a Rod of Necromancy, right? When I use it, it applies a debuff on the hero that says this hero cannot use potion or rod or staff anymore for the next 20 or 45 seconds. And the item itself has an exclusionary rule. This item cannot be used by this hero or any other hero for this period of time. So essentially, there's an imprinting of the item on the hero or an imprinting of the hero on the item, and both types of cooldowns now follow the same system. And I believe this is an undesirable and unintended side effect, especially for healing potions. I believe Blizzard tried to create the functionality of Rod of Necromancy and Wand of Negation to match Staff of Sanctuary and Staff of Preservation, which is to say, to make it follow a global cooldown rule set. But they have inadvertently, most likely inadvertently, also applied it to the healing potion. I have a little bit of text written down to this effect as well, in case you are more of a visual reader learner. The global cooldown rules are: a hero uses a staff and then puts the staff on a global cooldown. The hero will also have an internal hero cooldown for staffs. The used staff becomes a cooldown corruptor to any new staffs given to the hero holding it, even if that hero is not the original caster. This one, I need to show an example. Alright, so let's go here to Warcraft 3. I have a Staff of Sanctuary on my Archmage, and I have one on the Mountain King, and I have one on the Paladin. This peasant is going to get hurt. Oh, I need to build a tower. And do I have Who's Your Daddy? Yeah. I need to make sure I'm safe from the AI. Hold up. Alright, so now when I staff with Archmage, this is, by the way, the PTR version of the patch. This is the old, well, I'm now playing on the PTR, which is what the old live version was. So essentially, this was live yesterday, but this is no longer live. But anyway, Staff of Sanctuary didn't change. So I'm just showing you how Staff of Sanctuary works. So if I staff with my Archmage on the peasant, the expected behavior is that the Staff of Sanctuary will go on a 45 seconds cooldown, and that the Mountain King will retain the right to use his own staff, and the Paladin will retain the right to use his own staff. So this one goes on a 45-second cooldown on the Archmage. The Mountain King still use his, and when I give this staff that should not be allowed to be used by anyone else to the Mountain King, you can see that the new staff is indeed not allowed to be used, and the free staff that he has is still allowed to be used. This is good, and when you give back the used staff, it is still used when in the Archmage inventory. But I want to show you that the Archmage has a corruption status. He corrupts perfectly fine items, because if I give the Staff of Sanctuary to the Archmage, he says, well, I can't use this for this long. But then when he gives it back, oh, now Mountain King can't use it either. So essentially, what is happening is the Archmage has a debuff status. I can't use any staffs. And if you give me any staffs while I can't use any staffs, I imprint and corrupt my internal exclusionary cooldown on top of the undeserving free item as well. Now, to be clear, this bug has always been in the game. I've always been aware that I should avoid stacking staffs on someone that already used one. And the way that this becomes relevant, say for instance, my Archmage is in range of a shop, and my Mountain King is not. My Archmage has one staff, and previously just staffed something. But now, I want to save one of my other units, this peasant right here, with my Mountain King. But he doesn't have a staff, and he's out of range of a shop. Maybe I will buy a new staff, and give the new staff to the Mountain King. But he can't use it. So this is something I've always been aware of. If I have a staff on cooldown, don't put a fresh staff on that hero, because he will corrupt it. My hope would be that Blizzard can change the programming, that used staffs remain used staffs and they have their own global item cooldown. This is a good thing because it prevents multiple usage of the same staff. But I don't think that the tedium of being forced to prevent handling a free staff as a corruptor hero that has a corrupted CD on top of the staff he used himself, I don't think he should be careful to pick up any staffs which now share the same cooldown, even if they were not in his inventory when he used the staff, and then the other hero can't use those staffs. And in the new patch, this unintended functionality that we have let it slide by. We've let it, slip by the wayside because I guess no one ever made a big deal enough about it, and maybe Blizzard wasn't aware that it could be a problem in niche cases, right? And as a pro, I can play around it. I will remember, it's like, oh, don't put a staff on this hero because he has just used a staff already, so I need to make sure that I don't give them anything, right? I can play around it as a pro, but it doesn't mean that it's good gameplay that it exists, right? So the new functionality that Blizzard is trying to avoid, if you have Wand of Negation, it is on a 5-second cooldown, right? And so I should not be allowed to use Wand of Negation twice within the 5-second window, only after. And so what Blizzard has done, which I understand and respect, is if you want and then you give it to an ally, he can't use it immediately. Now in the previous live version of the game 2 days ago, you could use it twice. And I will say that I don't think this is an issue at the lower or the middle level of play in Warcraft 3. I think 99.99% of the Warcraft community doesn't know, doesn't care, doesn't use, and doesn't mind multiple uses of an item that has a 5-second cooldown just by passing it over to another. APM are also resources in a game, and if you want to spend the APM to pass over an item with 2 charges to another hero so that he can use it within a 5-second window rather than after 5 seconds, I think that's an interesting little bit of skill expression that is tolerable. But I also understand Blizzard's intentions to streamline game logic, which says we set this item as a 5-second cooldown for balance purposes and for game logic. This should remain this way, and therefore it is our vision that we want to make sure that Wand of Negation, when passed, will be on the cooldown that was intended, and it cannot any longer be shared. And the same is true for Rod of Necromancy. Rod of Necromancy was allowed to be multipassed between heroes 2 days ago, But in the current hotfix version of the game, you can no longer do so. If I pass over a used rod to the Lich, he cannot use the used rod, but he can use his own rod. But here's the problem. A little bit of item passing and I give the free rod to him, and now he can't use any of it anymore because it was given to a Death Knight who has a debuff of no use of Rod of Corruption personal hero cooldown, which now corrupts the second Rod of Necromancy. So I think the corruption status should be removed so that you can have more comfort being free to handle items with any heroes. The items remember themselves what their cooldown is without the need to apply a cooldown corruption status from the hero. I think that is something that is independent of this entire issue that could and should be fixed for Staff of Preservation and Staff of Sanctuary. It's a quality of life change that barely affects balance, but just makes it a little bit less tedious to avoid handling items with the wrong hero. And after you do that, you will truly achieve the actual intended functionality of all these items, which is to say, that item has a 45-second cooldown, that item has a 45-second cooldown. It is our promise as Blizzard to you that you can use it every 45 seconds. That one and that one. 2 charges in 45 seconds. Because right now you're not actually getting what you paid for with the Staff of Sanctuary, because sometimes it's going to get blocked out by the wrong hero touching it for a bit. So that is kind of a different issue. That is my request and my suggestion to achieve the proper functionality. There is a second component to this, but before I nerd out into that, I want to talk about a question that I see in chat and also something that I prepared to talk about myself. Does any of this really matter? Is any of this really all that impactful? Which is a very good question, and my answer to it is the following. At the low level and the middle level of Warcraft 3, and the blissful level and the ignorant level, and the people that don't read patch notes and the people that don't properly utilize everything that is possible in a game, nothing really matters because you could be inefficient anyway. You may not be aware of things that could be done, or you may be too slow. So if I were to say, for instance, your altar builds 5 seconds faster if you're orc, then you could say, does it really matter? Because I look at bronze games and this guy made his altar and then he didn't make a hero for 21 seconds. Yeah, he just forgot. Yeah, he just has that little awareness and APM available. So does it really matter? Even if it could be made 5 seconds earlier, the hero, he still didn't do it. So it doesn't really matter. And that's why, I mean, in general, you could say that nothing really matters, but the statistical probability for the bronze player to notice that his altar is finished and for him then to potentially make his hero goes up the shorter the altar building duration is. So statistically it does matter, but does a bronze player always fully utilize the tools to his disposal? No. So now let's talk about the Rod of Necromancy. Will a bronze player pass over his rod within 0.7 seconds to 3 heroes and rapid spawn 6 skeletons and bypassing the original intended functionality of Rod of Necromancy? No, I don't think a bronze player first of all knows, and secondly he couldn't be bothered. He could care less about doing that, and thirdly he doesn't have the actions to do it that fast, and fourthly he's probably going to drop the item on the ground and give it to the opponent by accident, who then doesn't see it and accidentally destroys it. So you could say it doesn't really matter, but still, statistically, probabilistically, at bronze or above it, at silver or at gold or at plat, sometimes someone will use it and sometimes someone will benefit from it, and therefore it does kind of matter. And so my second point to it is there is a very clear casual to kind of try-hard casual player base that makes less use of optimizations, but there's also a viewer base that watches high-level play. They watch me, or they watch the current active pros, they watch streams, they consume tournament esports content, and then there is the actual slice of people that play at high level, also in order to either for their own pleasure or to perform for others on stream, on Twitch, on YouTube, or via competitions and replays. And I think that slice is important. I no longer believe that they are the only slice of a games community that matters the most. I don't think the game's balance should only be balanced around them. But I do think when we look at skill expression, exploits, skill expression, optimizations, we should look how it affects that level of play. And as a community, look at it to see if a Rod of Necromancy shared cooldown block, making a Rod of Necromancy a hero-based, going from a hero-based cooldown on Rod to a global item cooldown, is that a good change for the game, is my question. And there's going to be people for it and against it, and I want to represent both sides of the argument. So the people that will think that that is a good idea to do this hotfix that just happened, that now no longer rods can ever be shared, not looking at the corruption cooldown problem, that's a separate issue, but just talking about should it be blocked to be able to share Rod of Necromancy to another hero. Here's why it should be blocked. It should be blocked because it seems unintended. The item has a 24-second cooldown. This is, by the way, not listed inside the game. The item is not saying that it has a 24-second cooldown. It just says creates 2 skeletons. You've got 4 charges, by the way. Good luck. So it's not like a devout promise. But if you look up some out-of-game stats, you'll find some outdated info and you'll find some up-to-date info. I think the best updated info is on Liquipedia. If you search for Liquipedia Warcraft 3, you'll find a lot of help, resources, and info. But right now, Rod, and we can read this from the patch notes as well, Rod is on a 24-second cooldown and is going to go to a 22-second cooldown. So that is kind of like being the promise of what the cooldown is. So for the game's logic and intended purposes, it should be a global item cooldown that cannot be bypassed by passing it. That would be one argument. And the second argument is, as a casual low-level player, as a bronze player, as a gold player, as an average player, or even a tryhard casual, I feel like the tedium of feeling forced to optimize the usage of this item by passing it over to another hero is a gameplay expression that I do not personally enjoy. Knowing that it is possible and more efficient potentially for certain situations means that I should be doing it, but I don't personally like this expression of play and therefore it shouldn't be possible. Potentially valid argument as well. I'm gonna exclude the pro gamers from that group because as a pro gamer you learn that anything that you can do to improve the game result, the game skill level, even if you don't like doing it, you're gonna do it because you should find any legal way to improve your chances to win the game, which includes things that you may otherwise think are tedious, but you don't even let yourself think they're tedious because it's all about trying to win. That's the spirit of competition and indeed of sport. That's why I am leaving out pro gamers and super tryhards like that. So that's argument number 2, that you find it's too tedious and now you know that it exists, so you don't want to have to do it. And this is what leads to more casual game representation in future RTS games, as developers cater more towards I think this is too tedious and therefore the players probably don't want to be doing it, so they cut away features, cut away. And some of those are valid and some are not. As a player, you will need to make the decision if you think that is a good direction or not. I think there is a risk to cut away too many skills expressions, even if some of them may seem tedious, because that is the only way that you can set yourself apart from another player at the high level, which is ultimately what makes watching high-level esports so interesting. It wouldn't be interesting to see the 18 combo Daigo block in Street Fighter if everyone could do it with a single keystroke. It was impressive because he was able to do it with such fast reaction time, or indeed even anticipation, in such rapid succession, so mechanically skillfully high. That's why it created such an epic moment in esports. Block. Oh! Right? And it's the same in Warcraft 3. High-level skills expression are fun. If I click a button and everything happens automatically, it's not as fun to watch. You would just play it. You would have fun playing, but you wouldn't want to watch it. So I guess it really brings across a question of, do we think this is fun? So let's talk about it. Simple case. As an undead player, you have a Rod of Necromancy and you can pass over the Rod to make multiple skeletons. By now, it's baked into the game. let's say it's also perfectly balanced around this. Undead has a perfect 50% win rate. We're not talking about balance now. Do you think that is a cool thing to do? It's like, oh, I found a cool new trick and now I'm going to use it until the end of time, right? Multiple skeletons. Question number 1. Question number 2, is it fun for the opponent? Or is it especially annoying, like mana burn is? I think it's not annoying to play against. I think it's fun to play with, but your opinion may differ and is valid. Those are the questions when it comes to that. And then the points against it, the points against making this hotfix, I guess I kind of already talked about them. Skill expression. It's been this way for this long now. Perhaps the window to change this core functionality of Rod has passed. Perhaps the sanctity of protecting the original cooldown of the item of Rod of Necromancy is not that important to be protected as it has been this way for this long. Therefore, maybe just leave it. So my opinion on the current healing potion rules in the PTR. So the PTR, remember, I know this can get confusing. 2 days ago, the live version can now be tested on the PTR of Warcraft 3. Currently, there is a rule for the healing potion that says you can use 1 healing potion per 20 seconds per hero. And this rule cannot be circumvented in any other way. If you give potions around, no matter what happens. And actually, I can show you this. Let's go to Warcraft 3 on the PTR. So if I have 2 healing potions on my Archmage and I have 2 healing potions on my Mountain King. And this is how the live version of the game used to be, but this is not the live version of the game now. Alright, then I'm gonna take some damage. Let me make some cannon towers, which is going to be appropriate damage. Okay, so my Archmage is here, and he's gonna use a healing potion, and this now visually puts the second healing potion on cooldown. But it is not really on cooldown, is it? Because if I give it to Mountain King, he can freely use it. Because he didn't use a healing potion recently. And as I mentioned, healing potion in the 2 days ago live patch is a personal hero-based cooldown, which doesn't corrupt. That means that if I have 2 healing potions on Archmage, and I use that on the Archmage, right, I can freely give him healing potions that will appear like they're on cooldown, but they're not really on cooldown, because even when I give the new potions given to him and the one that was in his inventory, the Mountain King can freely use any of them. So we've established that in the 2 days ago live version of the game, healing potions and Rod of Necromancy do not suffer from item cooldown corruption imprinting. And that this is a good thing. Why is it a good thing? Because if the Archmage has 2 healing pots and he's near the shop and I'm being attacked, right? I'm being attacked by a hostile force. Like, oh no, my Mountain King is dying and my Archmage is dying, right? Oh no, right? So I'm gonna use a healing pot. Oh, and oh no, I'm being attacked. I need to buy another healing pot. Oh, it's on cooldown, but I'll give it to Mountain King. He needs my health. Ah! It's like, oh, he used it. Good, right? And I think that's good. I think that's a good thing, that I can freely give a heal pot to a second hero, whether or not I've used the healing potion on my first hero. I think this offers the player a tedium-free, worry-free freedom to hand potions, and every hero retains their own right to use healing potions, irrespective of whether they use the potion themselves or not. They can at least be a workhorse. They can be a mule to give items to another. And so I think this healing potion functionality is perfect. I think it should stay this way. And I have actually highlighted that here. It's perfect the way it is. 1 heal pot per 20 seconds per hero cannot be circumvented in any way. There's no abuse possible. And heal pot items can be handled with complete liberty with no risk of accidentally corrupting the cooldown. So what's happening in the new version of Warcraft is that you cannot tedium-free, worry-free handle healing potions. And that is because we went from 2 types of cooldown management to 1 type of cooldown management. After all, I use potion on Death Knight. He cannot use potion. Lich can use potions. I give this potion to Lich. And now Lich cannot use the new potion because it was corrupted by the Death Knight. And when he gives all the potions to the Death Knight retroactively corrupts the cooldown of all of them. And now there's no way for my Lich to use potion because the Death Knight touched it. So I believe this was unintended entirely for the healing potion. And I believe this should be reverted. So let's come with the conclusion. My suggestion for the conclusion. Personally, I do not find it a problem that Rod of Necromancy gets multi-used. I think it's been in the game for that long, and the perfect window to address it was in 2004. And I think it's been in the game for 20 years and it's fine. I don't think it's game breaking. And if you want to nerf undead, which I'm not sure is necessary, because the recent patch was so recent, even if you want to nerf undead, there are other ways to do it. You could nerf Orb of Corruption, you could nerf Gargoyles, you could nerf Lich, you could nerf Frost Nova's damage to the main target. I'm not saying any of these need to be done, but there are numerical changes you can make to address and pull into line any of the races in any way, or to nerf them or to buff them. It doesn't need to be via a quality of life and cooldown behavioral change under the hood. And my opinion is Rod of Necromancy is a fun skill expression that gets used mostly at the middle to higher level play. I don't think it's game breaking, and I think it should be reverted. Not only because it accidentally corrupted the way that the heal potions now get used, as essentially a healing potion is like a Rod of Necromancy with one charge. And so the other heal pots in your inventory didn't need to be affected. Only the heal pot itself should be affected, but it doesn't exist anymore. It's like as if we were making this discussion about Rod of Necromancy with one charge remaining. There would not be a discussion. So anyway, I think it should be reverted. Partially because of how it affected heal pot, but also just because I don't think it was necessary. Though I do understand the reasoning by Blizzard to make this change. It seems like it's a good quality of life, consistency, bug fix improvement for Rod. But I think we should keep this bug in the game, personally. Though you're allowed to disagree, and you don't have to be angry at me if you disagree. That's just my opinion. But you can see how it highlights collateral damage in the healing potion, at least in the current implementation of things. Then, when it comes to the Staff of Sanctuary, I would like to ask for a bug fix on the corruption. And I believe, I don't know exactly why Staff of Sanctuary works this way, but I remember when it got done. It was Blizzard's way to stop multi-staff usage. 3 heroes, 1 staff, 3 usages within a 1-second period. That was intended to be prevented, and that's when they made the coding change. But like I said, there's a couple of issues with it. You cannot freely handle each other's staff with the hero that has previously used that staff. So, how can this be fixed? There's a UI UX aspect to it, and there is a programming aspect to it. On the programming level, I'm not a programmer, so I can only describe it with words. On the programming level, Staffs of Sanctuary use the global cooldown usage, and at the same time, the hero cooldown usage. The hero cooldown being the exclusionary rule, I cannot use staff for 45 seconds. And it uses the global item cooldown rule on the staff, which is this item cannot be used for 45 seconds. And both together have an imprinting towards each other that shouldn't be there. Maybe the reason it happened is because of the display of cooldowns. So how do cooldowns get displayed? In Dota 2, you have an item called Mechanism. Mechanism is an item that any of the 5 players on a team can purchase, and it has a healing effect when you press it. When you use the item, it releases a healing pulse that heals everyone within an area. However, it probably at some point was very broken that you could use this multiple times. If 5 heroes all bought Mechanism, you could give 5 area of effect healings to all 5 players. And this was probably deemed to be too broken, and so a change was made. As Mechanism gets used, every hero that benefited from the healing got impressed with a debuff icon that you could see over the hero. Right? There's a debuff tray where you see all the buffs and debuffs, and sometimes there's quite many in Dota 2. And one of those is mechanism has been used on this hero. Therefore, this hero can no longer receive the benefits of mechanism for this period of time. Let's say it's 30 seconds. I believe this could be done with healing potion, and perhaps with Staff of Sanctuary, and perhaps with other, with healing potion that says, I've just used the pot. For 20 seconds, I cannot use any pots. And what that would do, if you see a debuff icon here over the lich that says 15, 14, 13, that he cannot use pots, the heal pots themselves in the inventory would look available. If you just follow the buff debuff icon that says heal pot cannot be used. The pot is available, and if I give the pot to a friend, he can use it because it's not the pot that's on cooldown. The pot himself cannot be on cooldown because it's a single charge. So how could the pot be on cooldown? No, it's the hero that cannot receive healing pot. So then you would have to have a debuff icon that says, yes, the pot is available, but this debuff says Lich cannot benefit from it, and therefore it won't let you use it. However, I understand that this would require extra UI functionality that clutters the game and may be hard to refer to, when essentially it is quite elegantly displayed in the inventory already by showing heal pot cannot be used. But we should be clear that there are two different rules that display in the same way. The rule of hero cannot use pot is displayed via item cooldown on the icon with the little clock, and this item cannot be used, global item cooldown, has the same display. So it's essentially two different functionalities and behaviors displayed in the same way. So if we don't think that the debuff icon is realistic to happen or creates too much clutter, I have thought of another way that it can be done. Here's how it could be done. I wish only to say. The Death Knight has two rods of necromancies. One of them will be used. The other will not be used. Only one of them should go on cooldown. But both do, right? But it's not really both on cooldown, because if I give this to the Lich, and I give this to the Lich... Oh yeah, now it is, now it is. In the previous patch it wasn't, right? But, so what you could do is, you could say, this item is on... This is if we revert to the old functionality of Rod of Necromancy, which I'm counseling, right? This item will get the 20-second cooldown, and the other one that is not actually on a 20-second cooldown, but appears like it in the current UI UX iteration, it could just be grayed out. So the hero's expression of I cannot use Rod of Necromancy will be that all corresponding items get grayed out, just with a grayscale, right? And the item itself, which has a charge that cannot be used specifically by him nor anyone, only that one will have the ticking down cooldown clock. Does that make sense? Yeah, they could put the debuff in the status bar, which is one way of dealing with it. And I'm highlighting a second way, which is you could use a graying out of items. That this one goes on the 22-second cooldown, but the other three get grayed out, which is to highlight the hero's exclusionary rule of personal hero cooldown of Rod of Necromancy. That way you would also know which of the three rods you can give to an ally in order to have them use the rod, if you forgot which rod you originally used. So those are my suggestions. In short, too long didn't watch. Revert the change that was done for Rod of Necromancy and inadvertently to Healing Potion, and intentionally to Rod of Necromancy and to Wand of Negation. Revert it. Remove the corruption of cooldown with Staff of Sanctuary for all heroes, that you can handle each other's stuff without imprinting a personal cooldown that had nothing to do with the other hero. And thirdly, while you have Rods of Necromancy that can be passed around between different heroes, make sure that, or even for healing potions, make sure that when you use one of them, the other gets grayed out, as in theory it should be allowed to be passed over to another hero, which of course in this undead version of the game is not possible. But if we switch to the human game that I have here, you see that it is very much possible, in fact. Right, so this Archmage takes damage. I use pot. It looks like it's on cooldown, but it's not really on cooldown, right? So you could have you could have these potions, instead of looking like they're on 20-second cooldown, they could all be grayed out. And that way I know, okay, Mountain King cannot use back, and still give it to Archmage and use it. So those are my suggestions for it. Hope you kind of enjoyed this nerdy deep dive. Hope you can see where, at least, even if you disagree with me on the Rod of Necromancy and the Rod of Negation, the fact that I counseled that the exploit should still be allowed. Even if you disagree with me on that, surely you can see that the collateral damage done to Healing Potion is extremely undesirable, and that part at least should be reverted, even if Blizzard doesn't decide to also revert Rod of Necromancy and Wand of Negation changed functionality. Okay, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to see more stuff like this, make sure to hit the sub button. You'll see more videos from me. Some will be nerdy like this, others will be less nerdy, but it's always going to be me, so you're going to get stuff I like talking about, and maybe you like hearing about it as well, so you can hit me with the sub. Thank you very much, see you next time, bye. Yo guys, I just discovered this after recording that video, so as a final addendum, another hotfix just dropped 6 minutes ago. Reverted cooldown change on charged items. Charged item cooldowns will once again reset when passed to another hero. Hopefully not for Staff of Sanctuary, just for Rod of Necromancy and Wand of Negation. We'll go check that out. Rod of Necromancy is back to 24, so they undone it. Ghoul movement increased. Yeah, no, this is good. I think that's good. So they go from 270 to 350 a month ago, and now with the change they went from 270 to 330, which I feel like was too weak. So now instead it's going to settle in the middle from 270 to 340, which is still 10 slower than Raider and Huntress, but not as slow as it was in the patch yesterday. Okay, so I think this is a good change. All right, so good change, good change, good change, good change. Okay, I think everything is good. But let's just check that the charged items on Staff of Sanctuary are still functioning as they should be. So let's go to the live version of the game, start Warcraft, and test the new Staff of Sanctuary. Actually, Staff was the same before and after, so this doesn't prove anything. Yeah, this still works like that. And then heal pots. So heal pots, I use it. This goes on cooldown, but Mountain King should still be able to use it, and he can. Okay, now let's go test Rod of Necromancy. What should happen is that I should be able to use Rod of Necromancy on Death Knight and then give the Rod, and Lich should be able to use that. And he is. Okay, that's good. And if he gives it back, DK should still not be able to use it, nor be able to use the new Rod that was never used. And when he gives both to Lich, Lich should be able to use both. And he is. Okay. The functionality has been fully restored to how it was a couple of days ago, so this is a good reversal of the hotfix from yesterday. Rod once again is allowed to be passed around, as is Wand of Negation, and Staff of Sanctuary still is not able to be passed around, but has the item corruption cooldown that I talked about, the corruption of the cooldown. Hopefully that could be changed under the hood, and maybe the graying out of the items to show which of the Staffs of Sanctuary has been used. Alright, cool. See ya.